Hattori Hanzo. Born 1542, died 1596. The most famous ninja who ever lived, except he almost certainly was not a ninja at all. The world knows his name from films and games, as a silent killer of the shadows. The real Hanzo was a spear-carrying samurai who fought in broad daylight, in the open, at the front of his lord's armies. This is the man beneath the mask the world built for him. You already know his name. You have seen it carved on a sword in a Tarantino film, worn by characters in video games, whispered as a synonym for the word ninja. Hattori Hanzo, the silent master of the shadows. There is only one problem with that legend. The real Hattori Hanzo was almost certainly not a ninja at all. He did not fight from the dark. He carried a spear, and he fought in daylight, at the front of armies, where every enemy could see his face. How does that even happen? How does a real soldier, a man who lived and bled and grieved, get slowly painted over until even his own country half forgets the human being and remembers only the mask? To understand it, you first have to meet the man they buried beneath the legend. And on the one night he was ordered to take a life quietly, in cold blood, the so-called demon of the shadows could not do it. He lowered his blade, and he wept. This is the true story of the man the world turned into a ghost. He was born in 1542, in Mikawa province, into the service of a minor lord named Matsudaira, a boy who would grow up to become Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who finally united Japan. Hanzo's father, Hattori Yasunaga, came from Iiga, a remote region of mountain villages famous for producing spies and mercenaries. But the family had left that world behind. They were now Mikawa samurai, sworn to the Tokugawa. Hanzo earned his reputation the loudest way possible. As a teenager he led a torchlit night assault on an enemy castle, and from then on he fought in nearly every great battle of his lord's life, spear in hand. He was so ferocious in the field that men gave him a name. Not the Shadow, not the Silent One. They called him One no Hanzo, Demon Hanzo. It was a tribute to how he fought in the open, not to anything he ever did in secret. Above all, Ieyasu trusted him with the one thing a warlord guards most jealously, his own life and his family. Hanzo became one of the captains closest to the Tokugawa household, a bodyguard as much as a battlefield commander, the hand that stood between his lord and the knife in the night. There was even a second Hanzo at Ieyasu's side, a different warrior named Watanabe Hanzo. Two famous Hanzos, one master. Already, within his own lifetime, the name was beginning to grow bigger than any single man who carried it. Then came 1579, and the cruelest order Ieyasu ever gave. His overlord Nobunaga suspected Ieyasu's own wife and eldest son of plotting with the enemy. To prove his loyalty, Ieyasu was forced to condemn his own family. His wife was put to death, and his son, a young man named Nobuyasu, was ordered to commit seppuku, ritual suicide. By custom, a trusted retainer would stand behind him to end his pain with a single stroke. Ieyasu chose Hanzo. It was, on paper, a simple duty for a warrior who had killed many times. Stand behind the young lord. Wait. Then strike once, cleanly, as an act of mercy. Hanzo had done this before. He found he could not do it now. He had watched this boy grow up. As Nobuyasu knelt and waited, the demon Hanzo stood frozen, the sword trembling in his hands and tears running down his face. He could not bring himself to spill his own lord's blood. Another man finished the duty. By the iron rules of the age, Hanzo's failure should have cost him everything, perhaps even his own life. Instead, when Ieyasu heard what had happened, he did not punish him at all. Ieyasu is remembered as one of the coldest, most patient men in all of Japanese history. But of that night he said only a few quiet words, words that survive to this day. Even a demon, he said, can shed tears. 3 years later, in 1582, the deed that would haunt his legend forever finally arrived. the warlord Nobunaga was betrayed and killed in Kyoto, at a temple called Honnoji, and Japan exploded into chaos overnight. Ieyasu was caught at the worst possible moment. He was far from home, near Sokarie, with no army, just 30 or so companions. The roads were swarming with the assassins' troops and with bandits hunting fleeing lords for their heads. To reach Mikawa alive, Ieyasu had to cross the one region that nobody in their right mind dared enter, Iiga, a maze of steep mountains crawling with hardened clans who had every reason to want any friend of Nobunaga dead. There was a brutal reason no one entered Iiga. Only the year before, in 1581, Nobunaga had poured tens of thousands of soldiers into that province to crush its defiant clans, burning the villages without mercy. The survivors still hid in those hills, grieving, armed, and burning with hatred for his name. But Hanzo was Iiga blood. He rode ahead into those mountains and called on the warriors there, not as a ninja casting spells, but as kin, negotiating, paying, promising. The men who should have been Ieyasu's killers became his shield. For days they moved through hostile passes, guided by local fighters who knew every hidden trail. It was tense, dangerous, deeply human work, built of bribery, trust, and raw nerve. And it worked. Ieyasu reached Mikawa alive. It is no exaggeration to say that without that crossing there would have been no Tokugawa shogunate, none of the 2.5 centuries of peace that followed. One desperate journey through the mountains bent the entire course of Japan. And here lies the irony that seeded everything. Because the escape ran through ninja country, and because shadowy local fighters guided them along secret trails, the story could later be retold as Hanzo the Ninja Master, summoning an army of assassins from the dark. The truth was patient diplomacy. The legend remembered magic. Ieyasu never forgot it. He rewarded Hanzo with a domain worth 8,000 koku of rice, and gave him command of a band of Iiga men who were settled close to his rising new power base in the east. When Ieyasu later built his great castle at Edo, the city we now call Tokyo, Hanzo's Iiga warriors were stationed to guard its western gate. The gate quietly took his name, and astonishingly, it still carries it today. Walk to the Imperial Palace in modern Tokyo and you will find Hanzomon, Hanzo's gate. Ride the subway, and one of the city's lines is named after it. A spear-carrying samurai from the 16th century is still woven into the map of the capital. Hanzo himself died in 1596, only in his 50s. His favorite spear and his battle helmet were placed in a temple called Soi-Nenji, where his grave still stands, quiet and largely unvisited, in the heart of one of the busiest cities on earth. His son inherited the name and the command of the Iiga men. But the son was not the father. He was said to be harsh and unfair to the warriors he led, and the men who had once followed the first Hanzo began to resent the second. In 1605, they did something that no ninja legend ever mentions. They mutinied. The famous, supposedly unstoppable Iiga corps rose up against their own commander, and the family lost control of them for good. Think about that ending. The most feared ninja clan in the popular imagination was not destroyed by an enemy army or a rival assassin. It came apart because its own men, treated badly, simply refused to serve. A labor revolt, not a battle in the dark. Now jump forward 400 years. In a famous Hollywood revenge film, a quiet retired swordsmith is given his name, forging a blade for one last killing. In game after game, a sleek assassin carries it into battle. The whole planet learned the name Hanzo. Almost no one ever learned the man. So how did a daylight spearman become the king of the shadows? The answer is time. The detailed ninja stories about Hanzo do not appear until the 1700s, more than a century after his death, once peace had turned real war into entertainment. Storytellers took a real, loyal, grieving samurai, a man who had once guided his lord through ninja country, and slowly rebuilt him into a supernatural assassin. Centuries later, films and video games finished the job, and the mask became more famous than the face. But the truer story is the better one. Not a magic killer, but a man, fierce enough to be called a demon, loyal enough to weep when loyalty broke his heart, and human enough that, 400 years on, we are finally remembering who he really was.